All right, today we're diving into a really complex theory that's been making the rounds online. We're going to unpack the arguments from a viral video that weaves together some pretty disparate threads: parental testimony about vaccines, the English language, nanotechnology, and what it claims is a blueprint for a new world society. Let's just walk through it piece by piece and see how the argument is constructed.
So where does it all start? It really begins right here, with these incredibly powerful emotional accounts from parents. The source material uses testimonies just like this one as its bedrock, presenting them as the raw, primary evidence that something significant and officially unacknowledged is happening to kids.
Okay, so the theory's investigation kicks off with a very specific and, according to them, a very puzzling symptom. It's an unusual preference for a particular language that, on the surface, just doesn't seem to make sense.
Now, this is the first big claim. The source alleges that parents from all over the world, in countries where English isn't the primary language, are noticing the exact same strange thing. Their child's first words aren't in Polish or French or Spanish, they're in English.
And here's a perfect example the source highlights to really hammer this home. A parent says they speak Polish to their son all day in a home with 3 languages, and yet the child's first language is English. The point they're making is that this goes beyond just watching cartoons. It's presented as an active, almost innate preference.
So then the video pivots. It takes that personal observation and asks this big rhetorical question. Is it really just a coincidence that this one language, English, also happens to be the language of AI, of global business, of the very code that runs our digital world? The source is suggesting pretty heavily that it's not.
And that leads us right into the central conflict that the entire theory is built on. It's framed as a classic showdown, the word of thousands of parents versus the official reports coming from major institutions. This slide really lays out the two opposing sides. On the left, you have what the source describes as this huge, consistent body of parental testimony, story after story of a healthy child suddenly regressing right after vaccination. And on the right, you have the official narrative that vaccines are put through incredibly rigorous safety trials and are confirmed to be safe by agencies all over the world.
To add weight to its claim that there's a crisis, the source points to rising autism diagnosis rates. It highlights this 2022 statistic from the US, 1 in 31 children. Now, it frames this not as a result of better diagnostics, but as hard evidence of a modern epidemic. So how does the theory explain this massive disconnect between the two sides? Well, it alleges a major conflict of interest. The argument is that you can't trust the official studies confirming vaccine safety because they're bankrolled by the very companies that make and sell the vaccines.
And the source brings this section to a close with another really powerful rhetorical question. It's basically asking you to decide. What's more believable? An army of parents from around the world telling the exact same story? Or data that the video argues comes from a compromised source?
Okay, so if the theory dismisses the official story, what's its alternative explanation? What's the actual mechanism here? This is where the argument moves into some pretty modern territory, proposing it's all about nanotechnology.
But first, it has to address some of the older controversies. The source claims that past debates, like the one over the preservative thimerosal, were actually an intentional smokescreen. It argues they were designed to be a distraction, to make critics look foolish and hide what was really going on. So here it is. This is the core scientific claim of the whole theory. It argues the real mechanism isn't something like a preservative. It's advanced, undisclosed nanotechnology, things like metal nano-oxides, that are being deliberately put into modern vaccines.
And the source then lays out this supposed 4-step process. Step 1, the nanotech gets injected via a vaccine. Step 2, these particles are so tiny they can get past the body's natural defense, the blood-brain barrier. Step 3, once they're in the brain, they interfere with the nervous system. And step 4, that interference is what creates the traits that are then diagnosed as autism.
So we've covered the how, according to the theory, but the crucial part, the real bombshell, is the why. The source is adamant that this is not an accident. It's a feature, not a bug, and it's all part of a deliberate, long-term plan for society.
The theory claims it finds evidence for this plan hidden in plain sight, in reports from global organizations like UNICEF. It takes language like this and interprets it not as an observation about the future of work, but as a literal statement of intent, a blueprint for designing a new kind of human worker.
And this is where they try to connect all the dots. The theory presents this table as the smoking gun.
It lines up the supposed needs of a future tech-heavy society on one side and the specific traits associated with autism on the other. A need for minimal social skills matches with difficulty in relationships. A need for tech proficiency matches a natural affinity for systems. And, of course, a standardized global language matches an innate fluency in English. A perfect fit, it argues.
And this is the final, shocking conclusion. The source doesn't mince words. It claims this is a conscious plan to socially engineer an entire generation, to alter their very neurology to make them compliant and perfectly adapted for a new global system, what it calls a new world order.
But the story doesn't quite end there. There's one final twist. According to the source, after causing this condition, the next phase of the plan is to manage how we all think about it by completely rebranding it. The argument is that the growing movement for neurodiversity and inclusion isn't some organic grassroots effort. No, the source claims it's a top-down PR campaign, and the goal is to reframe this condition not as a disability but as some kind of an enhancement, a superpower. And what's the evidence for this campaign? The source points to the growing list of incredibly successful, influential people who have publicly shared that they're on the autism spectrum. It presents these disclosures not as personal stories, but as strategic moves in this larger rebranding effort. And quotes just like this one from Elon Musk are held up as Exhibit A. It's the perfect example, the source says, of this new narrative, directly linking neurodivergence with genius, with innovation, with changing the world, and in doing so, making it something to aspire to.
And that is the final, very provocative question the video leaves its audience with. It frames the entire issue, not as a debate about health or diversity, but as a choice. Are we celebrating a natural superpower, or are we being conditioned to accept an installed program? And that is the complete architecture of the theory, as presented in the source material.